I grew up in Empire. It wasn't like it is now. I had great parents. My mom and dad were great. They really were. Then they got a divorce when I was 9. And that kind of threw me for a loop. I just started getting high in high school, and I just kind of liked the way it made me feel. I moved out when I was young for my mom and my dad, and I moved in with my kid's daddy, and he was very abusive. I was with him for like 13 years, and we got 4 kids together. And one day, I decided that was it. But I just left one day. I left him, my 4 kids with him, and went and moved back in with my dad. In which that doesn't make it okay that I did it like that. And then I really went off the deep end, I guess I was what you would call a functioning addict for a long time. I worked, and I just went off the deep end, and I was, stuck in a dark, dark, dark place. I started hearing these voices and stuff. They would torment me. There would be nights that I would lay and cry and beg God to make it stop. Last year, I got sent down here, court ordered, and I stayed for about 7.5 months. And thought I had it, thought I had it. Went back out. I was out, sober for a little while, then boom. And one night in my bedroom, I'm just like, having me a whole fit with the Lord. I'm like, God, I've never been mad at you, but right now I'm really upset. And he told me like 3 different times, very clearly, audibly, in that still small voice, my will for you begins at the City of Lights. I told the Lord that night, I did something really stupid. And I told him, I said, if you wake me up in the morning, I'll go back to the City of Lights. That next morning, I got up and I packed up my stuff and I came back. And the Lord has done so much in my life here. I highly appreciate the City of Lights. This is a great place because it gives me somewhere to sit and focus on things I needed to focus on. But the Lord has really, really, really blessed me. I don't even know that person I used to be. The key is obedience, for real. It's really paid off.
I was really depressed growing up. I had a lot of anxiety. I was very isolated. When I was growing up, when I hit like 11 years old, I started, first off, my family came down and I had some insecurity issues starting to grow in me. I was being homeschooled and my cousins came down to visit me. One of my cousins, she kind of made fun of my weight, and she forced me on the scale, laughed at me, she bullied me a lot. And I was already going through insecurities and stuff, so I developed an exercise disorder. Trying to lose weight, didn't really know what I was doing. Started cutting down my food, and then it turned to a full force addiction. And then I got bulimia. And then when I got addicted to bulimia, it kind of became a full-fledged addiction of 24-hour isolate in my room, binge purge all day long, because that's the only thing I knew how to do, and that's where the addiction really began. That was my original disorder. It was just a chaotic cycle of 24/7 addiction, hiding in my room. I didn't come out. I didn't really talk to family. It has the same effect as drugs on your mind and in your brain, and you get so dependent on it because there's this empty gap inside of you. You don't know how to feel, you know what I mean? And you don't feel loved. You feel hopeless. You don't know what to do. I started working at Outback as a prep cook, and I fell in love with a guy there, and I don't know, he was different. He was really different, and I really got attached to him. I wasn't on drugs then, but I'll tell you what, I didn't know really anything about drugs, but all my best friends, all the best friends that I've met on the street, all the best people I knew were on drugs, and I didn't know it. And he was different like me, and later on I found out, well, he was on methamphetamine. My drug addiction was very short, and came to City of Lights, and I was pretty much court ordered here. Like, it wasn't my choice. I know it was God, though. I know God put the court order on me so I wouldn't flee because he knew I'd run. There was a lot of things that God delivered me from. I thought I was kidnapped here. First of all, I thought I was kidnapped, that everyone was against me. The enemy lied to me, told me it was the end of the world when I was on drugs. But the thing is, I didn't trust in the City of Lights, but I trusted God. When I first got here, it's like, there was a lot of craziness going on, but I talked to him 24/7 all day long. Went outside in the field, was calling out to him and stuff, and that kind of became my way to him, talking to him 24/7 and then building that relationship with him.
Born in 1975 to a young lady who was 16 years old at the time, and my father. I was adopted at age 3 by my mom's husband at the time. We were in church a lot most all of my life. Things just at home didn't line up with what was going on at church. At age 12, I was molested by my stepfather, who was a preacher at home, and it just confused me really bad because I wasn't sure, how you can hurt someone that I knew really loved me. Then at age 14, my mom moved a cousin in who raped me. Age 15, I was raped twice by 2 friends. And age 16, I had an abortion, and that's when I feel my addiction started. At age 18, I started smoking marijuana. And that rocked on for several years. I got into harder drugs. I got married at age 19 and divorced about age 24. And when I divorced and I was single, I started going to the clubs and things, and I met some people that used drugs, and that's when the drug use started. I met a guy, and he was an addict, and I really just knew I was going to save him. I just knew I was going to save him, and I was in the relationship with Dan for 22 years. His mother was a nurse, and she supplied my pills. I took the pills for about 10 years, and I quit in 2015 on December 8th. But then COVID hit, and I was locked in the house. And just being by myself and being locked in the house, I had tried meth before. I started using meth again. 4 years later, I have formed a meth addiction where I'm actively using every day. Tired of being sick and tired, I looked on the internet for help, and everything seemed so expensive. But I found this place, and I emailed Miss Jamie and told her my situation, and she told me that they had a place for me. So that's when I decided, after about a year of going back and forth with her, that this is what I needed. I needed long-term treatment. When I first got here, everything just seemed so happy. It seemed so peaceful. It seemed like home. It seemed like everything that I wanted. I just didn't know how to get it. It didn't happen overnight, but day by day, things started falling into place by doing the coursework, by just getting up and getting on a schedule. Getting a schedule was such a huge thing for me. I had no kind of schedule. Everything was so chaotic in my addiction. I knew I was in the right place from the beginning. And I know that I'm still in the right place today. That sounds like a commercial, but it is so true. It is true. I mean, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. And that's a good feeling. That's a real good feeling. I'm the youngest in my family.
When I was born, my mother was married, and I already had 2 other siblings, and I was illegitimate. My mother had had an affair with his best friend, and he had had an affair with her best friend. And then when the truth came out after I was born, they ended up getting a divorce. And then my mother had remarried at this time, a man 10 years younger than her. Fortunately, he was a drug addict, alcoholic, but he never abused us. He did the best he could. He had his struggles. And I watched him live his life being rebellious, seeking God, being living with consequences of his rebellion, to returning back to God. This happened over and over. We went to church, but it was very confusing because my mom was a Jehovah's Witness and my dad was a Baptist. So it was the 70s when I grew up, so a lot of freedom. My brother and I pretty much raised ourselves. My dad was a truck driver. My mother was a hairdresser. My whole life I was just surrounded by marijuana, and he was an alcoholic, and I come from a long line of alcoholics. She had 6 brothers, and they all died from alcoholism, drugs. As a teenager, I started experimenting with marijuana. I was around it my whole life, so I figured it was okay, and my parents let me have a lot of freedom, but I was still rebellious to society. I had no idea that what living that way would do. I didn't know that all that freedom would just make me miserable. I moved to Arizona with all these people that were into the New Age, crystals, and my brother was into all that. I was exposed to so much witchcraft. I would call myself spiritual, and I was really looking back, I was more of a witch than I was I called myself a Christian. But now looking back, I was doing a lot of stuff for Satan that I didn't even realize I was doing. So in my 20s, my addictions escalated, and I got into, I was heavy into psychedelic drugs, pills, everything. I did everything. I started drinking, then the alcohol was always like, when I would try to dry up or whatever, or get help, I'd go to psychiatrists, and I'd get some kind of diagnosis, depression, manic depression, borderline personality. Then of course I wanted medicine for it. So they give me, and I tried so much. Oh, just this, that, and this. And I started going to rehabs in my late 20s. And several times I tried to kill myself. But more medicine, more trying anything except just surrendering to the Lord, I'm not the crazy, fragmented, suicidal person that I used to be. I feel like I know who I am now. I feel like I know who my father is. I know my identity. I understand that the enemy has no power over me whatsoever, only what I let him have. My future looks completely different than what I ever thought it would look like.
I was born in 71. I had wonderful parents. My mother was Pentecostal. She raised us in dresses. My dad was a trucker. I used to complain that every time the church doors opened, she drug us to church. And since I've been here, I actually said, God, am I becoming like my mom? I'd have to say I started smoking cigarettes and weed. I started first cigarettes at the age of 11, and then weed. And it was with supposedly a best friend. Then about 12 years old, I met my first husband, who I had 3 kids with. One passed away, Sid's my daughter, and my son, Kurt, was drinking one night and put his leg on him and suffocated him. But I spent a long time thinking I sent my son over to be murdered, because that night I was tired and Kurt only wanted Kurt David. And I said, they're both your sons. You take them both or neither. And so he went ahead and he took, and I knew Kurt was an alcoholic. Alcohol had him since he was 19. He had a hard childhood, his family did. So that was the time of me being angry with the world. But with SIDS, I was angry with God because there was no one to blame. I went through that, and I've been married 3 times on my 3rd. I've had cancer. It was cervical. Didn't tell my children. I will try anything once, and if I like it, I'll do it again. I don't know if any other human's that way, but that's a me thing. If I like something, I'm going to do it again. And my downfall is me. I'm my own downfall. God had to save me from me. We ended up in Savory Camp, a place that it's got good people, but it's just a heaviness. But like I said, I will try anything once, and if I like it, and I liked the crystal meth, it kept me awake but non-productive. But I lost everything, even the closeness I had with my sons. God's bending my family, and I don't know how my children feel. But I always took pride in being mom and dad. I was a single mom, and us 3 always leaned on each other. And God had to separate us. I know that's why God sent me here, because I'd made my children basically God's idols. I put them before God, forgetting that God had given them to me. So I lost everything. A house, friends, because I trusted humans instead of trusting only God. Because humans are humans, they make mistakes, but God doesn't. God has, because it's not been me, God's changed me. I'm not angry like I used to be. I used to be a very violent person. All I know is there's freedom in God.